Hi, I'm Wendy, and today we're going to do a coastal scene. I chose this because it sort of leads on from the knife painting, but we're going to use a knife and a brush. We're going to use both because we need to get a feeling of distance into our paintings. I don't know if you've ever done it, but you get a picture and you do it and you think, yeah, that's okay, but it looks a bit flat. If you've ever had that problem, then a few of these techniques will help you work out how to do it. So, first of all, I'm going to show you a couple of examples of the things I mean. So, sometimes when you take a photo for reference pictures, it's a very dull day, hence this one. This one here was a very grey day, but I saw potential in it, so I thought, yeah, that'll do, because I can soften out the background to push it back with a brush, and I can use the foreground with a knife, which will bring the front forward. So hopefully that gives a good feeling of distance, and that's what I want to do today. So I picked a photo that I took down in St Ives. It was last summer. It was rather a boring day. There's no waves, there's nothing much going on, the sky's a bit plain, and the tone of the rocks, there's 3 or 4 headlands there, but they're all the same tone. How do you get over that? How do you make it feel like you've got space in your picture without looking like just a big heavy lump? So that's what I thought I'd do. When I originally went down there, I did a sketch on a piece of paper, because I didn't actually have my sketchbook in the car, so that's as far as I got. But I had in my head the idea that it was going to be stronger coming forward with more detail going back. When I did get my sketchbook, I did a proper drawing. I think it helps to do a tonal drawing, for the simple reason that if you're a slave to a photograph, you'll sit there and you'll copy that, which is all very well, but it'll make all the mistakes that the camera makes. So the camera sometimes throws things into silhouette. We know that's a big lump of green and dark, but we need to separate it into a background, a middle ground and a foreground. So I've done a quick sketch again. The background is darker than the sky, but it's very smooth, there's no detail on it. I thought we'd have a little bit of detail on the middle ground, so I've made a mark there, background, middle ground. And on the foreground, I thought that's when we come in to use the knife, so we can get it nice chunky paint, nice and strong. I also decided, because there's very few waves, there's one little tiny wave at the front, which doesn't really do very much. So I thought we'd make the sea a bit more interesting as well. So that's our plan for today. This is another painting using that technique, which is at somewhere near Port Isaac. We've got the background and the sky done with a brush, and the sea at the back done with a brush, and then we've got all the foreground and the sea, which we're going to augment with some white ink as well, which will add an extra bit of texture at the front. So first of all, what do? Well, we've got our photograph as a guide. We're going to put our colours out. I can't believe it. Excuse me. Sorry about that. It always happens. Right, so we've first of all, look at your photo, decide what colours you think you need. So I look at that and I think blue, brown, green, yellow, white. That's all I think, just basic. You don't have to get bogged down with warm browns, cool browns. You just think blue, brown, green, yellow, white. Everyone has their favourite browns, greens, whatever. So I've squeezed out here. To start off with, I've got raw umber, which is a transparent brown. I call it black, but it's not, it's Payne's grey, which, as you know, is a sort of bluey black. Payne's grey. We've got cobalt blue, which is a nice summery blue, because I decided it was summer there, but I'm going to try and make it look a bit nicer. Naples yellow, which we need for the sand. There's a little bit of raw sienna there, which I thought I might need. Bit of sap green for the trees. There's lots of trees and bushes on top of those cliffs. And I'm not sure what that one is. Indigo. The sea down at St Ives is quite turquoisey, as you can see from the photo. It's not really a cobalt or ultramarine, it's more turquoise. So I use a bit of indigo. Yeah, and we can also, I've got turquoise as a colour. Excuse me, I've got to reach over. One of these kind of colours is good, turquoise blue. If you can't be bothered to mix up turquoise, just squeeze a bit of that out and add that to your blue, and that will make a nice colour. So we're going to start off by just doing a quick pencil drawing. We're not going to do a heavy drawing as we would in our sketch pad because we've already established what's light, medium and dark. We're going to, in fact, what I think is better is to put the sketch up and work from the sketch. Sometimes you need the photo for the details, but what happens, you'll end up just copying the photo if you've got it there. So have your sketchbook there. You've already marked in, this is the darkest bit. That's the medium, that's the light. So that's what we're going to do. So let's start off. We're going to do a rough approximation of this picture. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. So we've got the sky. I'm going to maybe move it down a little bit. So let's use that line as a guide. So it's about a quarter, just under a third on the way down. So we'll start with that. And then you've got that little bit there, and then it goes up onto a bit of a hill, and then you've got that little clump of whatever it is at the top. And then you've got that second, we'll call that the middle ground, we'll call that the background, that the middle ground, and that the foreground. So we've got the middle ground lump of rock, which is actually got a lot of rocks on it. It's quite very straight along the bottom, and then it comes up and it sort of, oh no, not block that little bit out, and it goes up to there, roughly, something like that would do. And then if you look at the negative space of this, you look at the shape of the sea there, you'll get your angle of the sea right, because it's quite hard sometimes putting a rock in front of another rock. There's the top there, which is lighter, that is lighter than what's behind it, only just, but it is. It's right on the edge, so I don't really want to do that, so I'll bring that down a bit. And if we look at this negative shape here, so if you follow the shape of the negative, you get if you follow that shape there, which is that shape there, you'll get the rough idea of where this comes up to, and it stops just before the end of the one behind it. So that's a rough guide. So we'll do that. And there is actually another rock coming in front. Whether or not you want to put that in, that's totally up to you. The sea, there's nothing to draw. There's a few lines. They are going at a slight angle because I was standing at the side of the beach. We haven't actually done that little backgroundy bit there. So let's put those fields in at the back, because there's a little field that gives you another layer. That's behind, that's in front, that's in front, that's in front. It's coming towards you. We're going to do all this, as I say, with a mixture, knife and brush, and we're going to augment it with some ink. So that's your basic drawing, and that's all you need to do. You can even make it simpler than that and just mark in a few lines if you wish. So we're going to start with the sky. I also, out of interest, I found another photo which I took, I'm not sure it was the same day, but it's actually a close-up of that second cliff, which is jolly useful because on this one, as you can see, you can't really make out what's going on here very well, but because in this one it's got more sparkle on the sea as well, which is interesting, so we can maybe put that sea on that picture. You can mix and match as long as it's roughly the same weather, you're okay. And that one, I presume, is that from a slightly different angle. Whether I want to put all the people in is up to me, but I can use those for reference for detail, otherwise I'll just stick to my sketch. So let's put that one there and put that one there. Right, so we start. Sky. What colour are you going to do the sky on the picture? It's actually just bland and grey. I don't want to do that because I'm going to make it look like summer a little bit. So let's go for blue. Obvious colour, really. I'm doing this with a brush because we've decided that that's the background, that's the middle ground, and this is the foreground. We've already established that with our drawing. And we know that colours get paler and softer as they go away. So I'm going to mark this in very quickly with a soft sort of loose brush. I use a square brush, but that's a personal thing. You can use your favourite brush, whatever it is. I think I've mentioned all the colours here. That's cadmium yellow light, I think. I don't think I mentioned that. And obviously white. You're going to need white. So let's get a bit of white and stick a bit of cobalt in it. We don't want it, glaringly summer blue. We want a nice pleasant sort of light blue. So there we go, bit of white in the cobalt. That'll do. So we're going to start off, we're just going to rub that in. It's a good thing to get in the habit of painting like this rather than in straight lines. I find that skies that are painted in straight lines tend to look a bit flat, and as we're working on getting some sort of movement and distance, a bit more life into this, we need to keep the energy going, so to speak. So we can do that. We know, don't we? Well, most of you probably know that skies usually get darker. The darker bits are at the top of the picture, and the sky gets paler and slightly warmer as it goes towards the horizon or the the end of where you see the sky. So we're going to do that. That's all we're going to do with that. If you end up with hard lines or marks that you don't like, you just get one of your soft fluffing brushes and you just swirl it around, and it will soften out all those marks, and hopefully they'll look like little bits of cloud floating around. That's it. That's all we're going to do for that. Then I'm going to add a bit of yellow to that blue. I'm not one for washing my brush a lot, so what I tend to do is I work, I don't know if that's a good habit or a bad one really, but I work and I just keep using the same brush until it's so clogged up I have to wash it. There you go. So I'm going to add a little bit of that yellow to the sky colour, which makes a kind of distant greeny colour. Let's put that there so we can get a rough idea. It's a sort of sandy colour with a bit of grey on top, but I'm going to start off with a sort of, that's not really the right colour, so let's put a bit of blue, a bit of brown. Let's make it, it doesn't matter if you go too hard at the beginning because we are going to scumble this at the end, so let's just get a bit of yellow. I don't like that bright yellow, maybe that's the wrong colour. Let's have that yellow. It's a sort of dull yellow. That'll do, that's much better. Right, that's going to be my field at the back. It's maybe a little bit too dark, but we can deal with that in a minute. And then I'm going to get this second, which is a sort of dull green. So I'm going to get the sap green, put a bit of raw umber in it, push it down a bit, get a bit of blue because it's distant-ish, until you get a nice, what I call a sludgy green. It's a sludgy grey green, sort of browny colour. Just keep out pushing and pulling until you get the colour you think you want. I'm not sure if that's going to be too dark, but again, we are going to scumble this afterwards, which will get over those problems. Yeah, that's the sort of sludgy khaki sort of colour. So it's a little bit bright, but it doesn't matter. As I say, we can sort that out. Let's put a bit more brown in there. I might use a smaller brush actually. I'm wondering why I'm using this huge brush to do tiny little bits of, there we go. Let's try that. So what have we got? We've got a clump of trees or something on the top there, and we've got something going on up there. It doesn't matter what it is, it's just what it looks like that matters. So just put it in whatever you think you see. Okay, that's it. And then we've got this big clump of trees up here. I presume they're trees. Yeah, I think they are. So that's going to be a rough approximation of the background. And then we're going to come to this middle ground bit, which is quite interesting because we've got lots of things going on. There's a bit of Van Dyke brown on my palette there from the other day, which amazingly is still wet. So I'm going to use a bit of Van Dyke and a bit of Payne's Grey, and we're just going to mark in some really dark bits. Well, pretty dark bits. So the dark bits are mostly the rocks along the bottom. So I'm working from the bottom upwards. Going to go around that because, as we'd established, that bit was lighter in front of that, and then it turns to green. There's a sort of green field which is quite bright actually, but that's okay, we're just not doing too much details. There's a brighter green which will hopefully bring that forward, and then there's quite a lot of sort of rocks. I don't really know what they are. They look like boulders on the top of this, so we're going to mark those in roughly. I say mark them in because we can, dare I use the word, fiddle with them later, but these are sort of bouldery things which give the effect of sort of rocks, and there's a little lighter bit there. Just look where the lights and the darks are. There's a few lighter bits of rock, boulders, whatever they are, and then the rest of it is green. So again, I'm going to put a tiny bit of blue in because it is still background-ish. It's not the foreground, so we're going to keep all our bright colours for the foreground. So let's do that. Fill that in green. The green is actually a lot brighter. I'm going to make it quite sunny looking, as we've decided we're going to have it summer. All this is green, and then I missed out a few darks there with the green, so let's put that dark bit there. It's quite dark, this rock, so we want to give the idea, and the very bits, this sort of cavey bits underneath here, not as in guinea pig, as in caves. Okay, right, make that darker. As I say, if you do end up painting it too strongly, it doesn't matter because we can sort that out at the end. So just get your medium, this is your medium sort of middle ground. Most of that is green, followed by some rocky colours coming down to hit that other rock. No one's going to pick you up on one bit of green in the wrong place, so don't worry too much, just get an impression of it. So there we go, got an impression roughly of what's going on there. Then I'm just going to mark in very lightly, because we are actually going to do this with a knife, but I haven't got to the knifey bit yet. So I'm just going to mark this in roughly so I know where my lights and my darks are. It's actually dark at the top, except for the very top, which has got some sort of stones on it. So that's going to be light, that's going to be dark. I can shove this in any old how, because it's going to, the bottom bit looks quite pale. So I'm going to put a bit of that raw sienna in with the Naples yellow, and I'm just going to chuck that in because it is quite browny orange, which is good because it's a warm colour, and as we know, warm colours come forward, so that will give you the idea that that's coming towards you. I'm also going to put a little bit more dark along the bottom edge, because that's where it actually goes into the sea. This is going to get covered up with a knife anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just marking it in so I know where everything is. Right, put that in there. Again, that's going to be knife too. So yeah, that's it. Any bits that you think you missed out, there's a dark bit there, there's those little bits on the top there. There you go, that'll do for now. Right, we're going to mark the sea in next. So I'm going to use cobalt as a base, because obviously I put cobalt in the sky, so sea usually reflects the colour of the sky to a certain extent. And cobalt, I'm going to put a bit of that. The sea is actually darker at the back, and it's getting paler because it's so shallow. The yellow of the sand is showing through the water. So we're going to start at the back. I'm going to put a bit of that turquoise in. I don't want it too strong, so let's pale it down with a bit of maybe Naples yellow. Might go a bit greeny. Let's give that a go and see what that looks like. Let's do that across there. If in doubt, you can always do that and hold your picture against the thing. Is it roughly how I want it? If it's way out, it's the wrong tone, you can just sort that out at the end. So we're going to come down in stripes, because that's what it is. See, water always lies flat. I always make it a little bit darker. It's just something I do. I put a bit of raw umber, a bit of something. I always make the sea a little bit darker when it goes underneath a headland or inside a sort of cove. And then we're going to start getting lighter, because I'm adding some Naples yellow as I go down, which makes a kind of greeny yellow colour, which is kind of going to be this colour, and then we're going to go paler green, and then you know what it's like when you look through the water and you can see there's bits with seaweed in which go dark, and then you've got the light bits. So it's a mix of all sorts of tones. I'm going to add more and more Naples yellow as I come down, because this is mixing the supposed sand colour, which is presumably going to be Naples yellow in a minute, into that blue and that turquoise. So I'm just doing rows across. I might put a bit of raw umber in it as I come down to make it a little bit stronger, because the sand is obviously going to be stronger. And anyway, if you've got one little stripe of sand there that shouldn't be, it won't matter, because it's all sort of blending in together. So this is like what you would call a good underpainting. So this is filling in, getting rid of all that canvas. I'm not quite sure whether to, I'm not quite sure whether to have the sea going down there. I think I will, because it is actually in perspective. I can't quite remember where I was sitting where I took this picture. I might have been zooming in, you see, from a long way away, which changes the whole idea, but that's the idea. So where did my picture go? There we go. Yeah, that's the idea. We got a darker bit there, not that it matters, but it's nice to have some streaky bits in, because we're going to put waves in and there aren't waves. So we're going to have to put some darker bits just so our waves work. So I'm going to put a few darker bits down the front there. That's fine. Right, I'm looking at my sky and I'm thinking, do I want to put any clouds in the sky? I don't think I do, really. I think that's okay. If you did, you can sometimes better just to do them with your fingers, so you can just do this kind of thing. Add a bit of white on you and just, oh gosh, I've got dirty fingers. Yeah, make sure your fingers are clean. And that's the shadow underneath the cloud. Yeah, put a few little clouds scudding along, because you do that, get that in the summer. So you don't have to put hundreds of them in. They'll look better like that than they will if you sit there and draw them in all nice and neat and look a bit like The Simpsons. Right, one thing we have missed out, which is a sort of focal point to a certain extent, is this nice strip of sand, golden sand in the distance, because it is catching the light and it makes the cliff seem darker. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mix up a bit of Naples yellow and white, just Naples yellow and white. The reason I'm going to put it on with a knife is not because I want texture, but because I want it very solid and thick. And sometimes when you're doing a little tiny thin brush and doing a line, I'll show you what I mean. So for example, if you've got a little pointy brush and you do a line I hope you've got a steady hand. You can go along like that. Sometimes it doesn't show up very much, which it doesn't, but if I do it with a knife, it will. So pick up a bit of Naples yellow, a bit of white, mix it up. You're going to put the paint on the edge, down that edge of the knife, and then you're just going to touch it, and hopefully it's actually a bit wibbly wobbly. I thought this knife was a bit straighter. It doesn't matter. You can't really drag it along like you can a brush, so you have to chop it down in chunks, so little bits to make the straight line. It's going uphill a bit, I think. There we go. So that will just give you something to focus on, the light bit of the sand in the distance. All these bits about whether or not there's darker bits, lighter bits, we can deal with that later. But now we've got the main base. Oh dear, I just put some more turtles in the sea. Doesn't matter. Make sure you've got an apron on before you go like that on your leg, by the way. Right, there we go. We'll add that to the composition. There we go. Fine. Okay, so that's my basic underpainting done. So we've done the underpainting now, which is this so far, and now we're going to gradually tidy it up and think about what we're trying to do. So we're trying to keep the background soft, the middle ground with a little bit of detail on, and all the detail in the foreground and the chunky and the choppiness of the paint, which we're going to do with the knife a little bit later. So at the moment I'm going to look at it again, look at my tones, about if I've got them right. So I think the tone of that field out the back is fine. This is the wrong colour. I mean, it's more green. I think I'm going to put a thin layer of raw umber over it. Good old raw umber. What would we do without it? Raw umber being a transparent brown. I can paint that over the top and it won't, oh gosh, got some white on it there. I can paint that over the top and it will just dull it down a bit, because it is quite dull, that bit at the back. There's a bit there I don't like too. Has it got any detail on it at all? It has some little bits getting darker, and I'll show you how we get around that. I think I've just messed up that Naples yellow I put on the beach. Never mind. Put a bit of dark. I'm using raw umber here and it's not quite dark enough, so a really tiny touch of Payne's grey, just to make it look like it sits down a bit. I don't want it to look like it's floating. And as I say, what I did notice is this bit here, which is more noticeable. Well, it isn't actually, because it's the other way around. It's darker there. But here, those rocks on the top of this second headland are actually lighter than the headland behind. So I'm going to push that down a bit again with brown. And when I come to touch this one up, which I'm going to do now, I'm going to put some lighter rocks. I'm not sure, they're sort of pale grey, so I'll stick with Naples yellow, a bit of blue, and a tiny bit of Payne's grey. I want more white, I think, to make them lighter, sort of very pale grey. And I look carefully at the photograph and I can see that most of these bits on here are like blocks of stone. They're almost like moorland stones, really. There's just there's some here as well. I'm not sure they're the right, but I can sort that out later. And now we've got a very, very dark bit. It's a slightly smaller brush. I'm not going to use neat Payne's grey because it's too black. So I'll put a bit of blue in it. And let's just, underneath these lumps of rock, there's sort of caves or something, and they look quite black. I don't know if that's how far the sea comes up or something. So let's get those in, because they do help to sort of anchor it down as well. That's black, and then it goes slightly lighter, strangely enough, before it hits the edge of the sea. Well, normally works the other way, but so let's do that slightly lighter. That's more of a brown, which is good. And the end bit is just dark underneath those greeny bits. Let's make that a bit more, oh, it's quite slanty actually. I thought it was a big sort of lumpy thing, but it's not. Okay, that's that. Little bit more detail going on. I don't want to overdo the detail. There's a sort of round bit coming around there. I'm not sure if those are trees or rocks, but they're just lumps, so let's just put those in. And there's green there, and this is just filling this in with what you see. There's dabs of grey, there's dabs of brown. When we come to this one in the front, which I'm going to do with the knife, it's a different kettle of fish, so at the moment I'll just put a little bright bit of green in there. I've got to paint that a bit more nicely. There we go. Right, I'm going to get a little knife and I'm going to start doing this with a knife, this rock here. So the way I do it, I'm going to put in the darks first. So I'm going to put the darks along that edge of the knife, and then I'm going to drag it up into the edge, because there's only a little bit of dark at the bottom. Mainly, oddly enough, the dark is at the top. The dark is this bit, and then it goes lighter on the top, which is a bit strange, but there we go, let's do it. So get the bit of dark on this side of the knife, the side that you're going to hold on, because it's straight edge and you can push it up like that. So let's get a bit of brown and a bit of black and mix it together. A bit of blue maybe as well. But a blues and browns make good blacks generally if you want darks. So although I've already done it with a brush, I'm actually going to do this with a knife. The edge is very, very straight there, which I've noted. Let's just try that a bit better. Oh gosh, there's something on this knife, I think, that's causing me a problem. Bits flicking off, never mind. Just put a little bit of dark along the edge there. That's it, we'll do it on that one too. Use up that bit of paint. Just a little bit of dark along the bottom. And now we're going to move up. We've got very orangey yellow rocks. If we don't get the exact colour, it doesn't, I mean, it is quite close, but if we don't get the exact colour, we can glaze it down at the end, so don't worry too much. All we need to know is that it's lighter. It's lighter there. It's a dark edge along the bottom, then it goes lighter, and then the top bit is very dark, followed by some little light rocks on the top. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make this colour here. So I'm going to have a bit of raw sienna, which is that nice orangey colour. Chuck in a bit of the Naples yellow with it. I don't want it too bright and scary, because it isn't. So I'm going to put a bit of raw umber in. So that's what I do with everything. And let's see how bright that is. It might be too bright. Well, it's not too bad, actually. So I'm using the knife at the angle that the rock's going. So if it's coming down in strata like that, you'd be doing this. If it's going up round like this, you'd be doing this. So just follow the contours. It's really hard to tell, actually, from that photo. So we're just going to sort of do the best we can. And then it goes very, very dark. No idea why, but it does. Ours is not the reason why, we just paint it. So there we go. And then it goes along there. I didn't draw it very well, so it's the wrong shape. This is where you realise that your drawing has to be slightly accurate. And it's coming up here. It's very dark. And then it's coming down there. I want to see it make it look like it integrates. We don't want to look like a big black lump sitting on top of a... I haven't got this... I've sort of messed up that angle a little bit. And then, amazingly, we've got a few little light rocks on the top. So I'm going to add a bit of white to that mixture of greeny, browny grey. And hopefully this will look lighter than what's behind it. If it doesn't, I'll have to tweak it with a brush, but it does, so I'm all right. The rocks go all the way along there. Bit darker there, I think. Are there any marks? There are a few darker marks on this. But what I want to make it look like is, I think I need a bit more black. Let's try a bit of indigo and brown. And then it goes black again, doesn't it? So we've got the grey, and then it goes black again. Well, that's not quite black, but it's a good dark brown, so that'll do. I do need a bit of Payne's, excuse me, I need a bit of, bit more Payne's grey, which is a bluey black, so you've already got a bit of blue in there to help you push it back a bit, because it's quite orangey underneath, and then we've got quite a dark colour on top. There's a big lump of something there, which I think I just dabbed in randomly without thinking about it. I think that's one of those rocks again, those bouldery things. So let's put those in. Just drag that in. That's the kind of thing. Yeah, it's just lighter, and it's lighter on the top. It's quite a mix of things here, and there's a couple of light bits down there. But anyway, and then we got this rock in front, which is just the orangey colour. So that colour we mixed up before, which was a bit of raw sienna, a bit of raw umber. Chuck that in, and that's lighter on the top as well. So we can have the top bit in there, and then we can pick up any old bits of dark that we've got that we can... There we go. What we're interested in here is getting a bit of texture going and a bit of lumpiness, because we want that all smooth, which is going to push back in a minute. And then we can have this bit. There's a bit here that isn't right. What's happened is I think I've gone over the I haven't got the shape end of that right, so let's make that rock, and then I don't have to paint it over with C. And then there's a sort of triangular bit at the end, which I hadn't really looked at properly. Again, my drawing was probably a little bit at fault. Let's put a bit of dark underneath that rock. I always like to have a bit of dark by usually dark I mean raw umber, anything that won't upset the colour too much, and just where it hits the water I like to make it a bit darker. It just helps to keep it, oh dear, got fingerprint in there. It just helps to keep the look like it's sitting in the water, not on the water. Just blend that in. So I think I told you I decided I was going to make the water a bit more sparkly, which I am. And I'm going to do that by adding some ink. But at the moment I'm looking at this background and thinking I need to push this back more. This is probably dry now, which is good. I need to push that back more. That's okay for a middle distance, and we're going to put all the texture in the bits. Oh gosh, another runny bit. I don't know where this is coming from. The tide's coming in on my picture. There you go. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to scumble the back. I'm just going to rub a bit of mist, for want of a better word, over those bits there to push them back, because I feel this is running into that one because they're similar tones. So like I said to you, if you accidentally overpaint the background, don't worry, because we can scumble it. So what I tend to scumble with either white or a bluey white, usually a blue that's in the sky. So if I take a tiniest bit of blue and white, what I'm going to do is in effect paint over it with a layer of bluey white, which will push it back, because as we know things get cooler as they go into the distance. So I'm just going to show you something here, because I've seen a few people do this and sometimes they put it on too thickly, but it doesn't matter. Always have a bit of kitchen roll in your hand so that when I go like that you don't go, ah, it's gone. It hasn't gone, it's underneath there somewhere. But what I'm doing is I'm pushing that back by putting a layer of mist, for want of a better word, between me and that rock. So now you can see that one goes behind and that one comes in front because it's softer. If it doesn't work or you don't like it, just wipe it straight off and you'll go back to the colour underneath. But I think that's better because it pushes that now looks like it comes forward, which is the idea. The way we're going to make the foreground more interesting is by putting some waves in. Waves usually have a little shadow underneath them. It's hard to see because they're just lines really, they haven't even broken. There's one little one that's broken. But I quite like the sparkliness of that. So I thought I'd do that with ink. And I've already got quite a few dark lines in here, so I'll use those as my guidelines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a bottle of ink, white ink. This is FW Daily Rowney. Give it a good shake because it does tend to settle at the bottom and give you clumpy bits. And what I'm going to do is dribble some waves on. Before I do that, I'm going to just dry the painting off, because if there's any splashing of thing, it's going to cause problems. So I'm going to just dry that off with a hairdryer for a couple of minutes. So I think that's dry now. Make sure it is, because we could have problems if it's not. So it's pretty dry. You wouldn't think it from my hands, but it is. Let's try the back of my hands instead. See, it's fine, it's dry. Now we're going to do a few waves going across here, and we're going to dribble them in ink. So we can't obviously have the painting up this way because the ink will dribble downwards, and I want it to dribble across. So this is where we have to turn the painting that way. Make sure it's reasonably straight, because if you want it to dribble at an angle, you can put the painting like that and the ink will dribble at an angle, but we don't. We want it straight because it's mostly straight lines here. They are going a little bit an angle. So I've got my white ink, acrylic ink, giving it a good shake, and what we're going to do, we're going to put a little bit on and then we're going to squirt it with a water bottle. That's why this also needs to be dry, because if you squirt water on it when it's still damp, you'll get little white dots all over everything, which isn't very pleasant. So let's go. I'll give you an idea of what it does. So we're going to squeeze up a little bit of white in the dropper, and I'm just going to put a little bit on there, a little bit on there, just for now, and a bit on there, and we're going to put a line there, and we're going to put a line there. I'm just squeezing it gently so it comes up randomly. You'll see why in a minute. And let's have another one down here. Start at the top, really, might be a better idea. Now, as regards the squirting, you need to make sure that you're not going to get a big whoosh of water. Have a bottle that's got quite a fine spray on it. I always shoot it up into the air once before I do the painting in case there's a lot of water collected in the handle. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure that I don't over squirt. If I squirt it and squirt it and squirt it, it's just going to turn into mush and drive off. But I just want those waves to fluff off a bit. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do that, that and that once on each thing. And what will happen, it'll start to run down. And this is where you have some sort of control over it. Using the back of your fingers, not the front, because if you use the front, you're going to get fingerprints like that, which you don't want. So we want to make it, say we don't want that bit there, do we? So we can just dab that off. But we're going to just do this with it. No, I'm trying to rub it straight so that it's not leaning or falling at a funny angle. You can drag a couple of bits into the background, but just what's on your fingers. So drag that down and then just clean off the bits. It'll help it to integrate into that. You don't want to look like it's completely smooth and then there's a big wild sea going on, because these are very shallow little waves. They're not, we didn't even really put any shadow underneath them. If you get anything you don't like, sometimes it's quite good to move it that way just for a while, because what it does is a couple of bits start to run down and it'll give you the idea that the waves are flicking over. I find that doesn't look right because it's too bright, the fact that it's in, so I can either bring the light up a little bit more and have a bit more light going up here, which will make more sense. If it goes too mad or too deep, just wipe it off, so it's not the end of the world. If you don't like it at all, just wipe the whole thing off and do it again. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bring the waves, for want of a better word, up a little bit further, because it looks like they cut off exactly at the point of that rock, and it is halfway up, which isn't good composition. So I need to darken that down when it's dry. But in the meantime, I'll just use a brush and I'll put, because the dropper does hold quite a lot of ink, so if I put a bit on the palette there, make sure you shake it first and put the lid on, because they're easy to knock over. Take a little bit on a brush and I'm just going to make it happen a little bit further back with a brush. I'm just going to, so then it does, this dividing line doesn't look too much of a dividing line, because at the moment it's a little bit sort of strong and it's cutting the picture in half. So I'm going to make some little lines going back, and now it looks like it fits in more, it graduates, which is what we want. Waves are quite erratic, so a little bit of this, and I say if you want it to do something, you just move it around a little bit. Don't get tempted to do that and have a look at it for ages, because while you're not looking, it will suddenly start running down the page if you're not careful. I don't think this will, because it's sort of starting to dry already, so I don't like those two dividing lines there. So what I'll do, get a little bit on a brush, and I'm going to put a shadow over this bit anyway later, so I'm just going to put another line in between there. So you can augment it with a brush if you wish, and maybe put a little bit around there just to suggest that there is a little bit of sea washing up. That's going to go into shadow in a minute, because obviously the light's coming this way. I was going to mention earlier that I could possibly have gone over the sky. I mean, I could. Sometimes when you need to paint the rest of the picture to see if the sky fits in, I think it's okay, but if I had more time, I would probably go over that again, which just means doing exactly what I did before, and maybe you know, being a bit more savage with the clouds, get them just to make it look a bit more interesting. So that's that. I'm going to dry that off now, because it does take a while to dry the ink. Won't be a minute. I'll be back shortly. Okay, so I think that's dry now. My little waves, they've spread out a little bit, which is not a problem. What I am going to do now, just to finish off, for want of a better word, we're going to do a little bit of knife on the front here to make because it's not only the texture we want on the rock and the sea, we want everything in the front to be textured. I'm going to do a little bit of knifey stuff around here, and then maybe put a couple of people in, because it's always good to, on a seagull, perhaps make it look like there's something going on. So I'm going to mix up the colour of the sand and the sea. So I'm going to get the raw sienna with a bit of white, quite a lot of white actually. Try not to get that blue in it, otherwise it will go green. If you haven't the idea is not to mix it up too much, because we don't want one colour, we want lots of bits of colour in it. So that's not really the right colour. Let's try some Naples yellow in that. What I want to do, I want to make this look like the sand that changes into the sea. I mean, fortunately down in St Ives the sea is really bright green and the sand is really bright yellow in some places, so I don't like that though. Let's tone it down. Anything you want to tone down, put a bit of raw umber in it, works wonders. Bit of raw umber in, so that's a mixture of raw umber, white, raw umber, Naples yellow. And I say, if you do put that on and think, no, don't like that at all, just scrape it right off, wipe it off. If it's still wet, you can wipe it off. I'll just show you that, just for something to do. Wipe that off, you're back to what's underneath it. But I do want to create some texture, so I'm trying to mix up the colour I want, which is this colour, and I'm just going to dab it. I'm going to dab it so it makes texture. Texture comes forward, and we want to make it look like something going on at the front here, because in the painting, in the photograph, it just disappears off into nowhere. If it varies a little bit, it doesn't matter. So let's have a bit more Naples yellow, a bit more white into that mixture. Half of me is tapping it, which makes little spiky bits, little knobbly bits like sand or whatever's going on the beach. I don't think you don't get pebbles on that beach. It's very, very smooth, and it's but there's always bits on the beach, bits of sand, a few little stones, things like that. So we can have a little bit of that. And then I'm going to change into put some sea in with, put some of the sea in between these wavy bits in with a knife as well, and cover up that mark I made by mistake earlier. We're also going to glaze over this when it's done, so some of these colours will change. I'll show you that in the end. Dab that. Let's put a few little dabs of sand going into the sea. And then let's pick up that sea colour, which if I remember rightly was cobalt, mixed with a bit of Naples yellow, mixed with maybe a bit of that turquoise. And I'm going to put a bit more white in it, just to lighten it up a bit. I'm not sure that's the right colour, so I'll go a little bit lighter. It is quite transparent at this point. That was a little bit of indigo, I think, that greeny blue, which is quite nice. Still looks a bit strong. Let's put a little bit of texture in there. Again, like we did here, we have texture and we wanted it to sort of disappear into the smooth. We don't want it to suddenly be a big strip of texture and nothing else, so we're going to integrate it into the sea by, we can also put another layer of ink on top. So there's way around all these little problems that we might face. Again, just a little bit of texture. Looks like the sea sort of coming up onto the shoreline, and it makes it more interesting. Let's get that sand colour again. I don't know what this is. It's called palette colour. It's all the colours on your palette all mixed up together. I'll put a little bit there. I was going to put shadow over that, wasn't I? If I remember saying that I feel that bit of light there was too bright, and it's in shadow. Usually when I'm doing shadows on foam on the sea, I do it in cobalt blue. I don't know, I think they look quite good in cobalt. So what I'm going to do, get a bit of cobalt, find a clean bit of palette if you've got one left, and just mix a very watery, almost the texture of watercolour there, like that, very thin. And I'm just going to, might need to bump it down with a bit of raw umber again. Bit of raw umber, a bit of blue like that. This sort of colour here, I don't know if you can see that. It's not very clear, it's a sort of grey. And I'm going to push that down because I think it's too bright and it draws your eye a little bit. I've been so careful with this, it's almost non-existent, this colour. So let's try that again. A bit of blue, cobalt blue, a bit of raw umber. And let's paint over that white so it's not quite as strong. It still looks like foam, but it's not quite strong. That's much better. So now your eye is going to the light bit, which is what we wanted to do. Have you noticed how my background has sort of jumped? It's jumped forward again. Sometimes when you do scumbling, it sort of disappears and you think, oh, I need to do that again. So I'm feeling I need to do that again. This is where you're starting to evaluate things and thinking, oh yeah, I can scumble that bit, I can put a glaze over that bit, I can do this. So I'm thinking I need to scumble that out a bit more, just push it, especially that. It's starting to blend into that one again, which it didn't do before. So I'm going to have white and a bit of cobalt, and that's all. Not too thick, but not too watery either. And as I say, always have a bit of kitchen roll in your hand, so if you do so, I'm going to paint that out again. And hope that when that comes through the second time, you see the minute you do that, it pushes it back and it's further away from you. And this is closest. I'm going to put some, when I've got to dry this off again. I think my waves have kind of disappeared. The white has maybe I put too much water on, oversprayed it a little bit. But what I can do actually, rather than, as well as glazing, I'm going to put some darker, oh, I'm knifing, aren't I? I forgot there for a minute. I've got a bit of Van Dyke brown, bit of Payne's grey, bit of raw umber, bit of blue on there already, contaminated from the thing. So all the colours we've got in our picture, and I'm going to just put some darker bits at the front there, because we know darker comes forward, so we don't want it to look like a little yellow wall in front of our picture. We want it to make that look like it goes back, so we're making the front stronger. So this is a mix of all the colours I've got in the picture really all together. Let's put that on there. Now normally I'd dry this at this time, but I'm not going to do it now. I'm just going to put in a couple of people, because as we know, when you see people in a photograph like in that one, it instantly gives it scale. I mean, you've no idea how big that cliff is until you put a little person next to it, and then you realise how big it is. So I'm just going to put a couple of little people. When they're standing against the sea, most people come up as silhouettes, so we don't have to worry about what colour hair they've got or what colour they're wearing. So let's just use the black or Payne's grey just to put in a couple of little people. Maybe they're going to get wet feet. They might be paddling, you see, so that's okay. I'm going to put them on a third, because there's nothing much going on here. There's plenty going on there, and everything's pointing this way, so you want everything to sort of converge on your focal point. So let's put, I will start off with a very small one, and then if it's too small, it's not actually, I mean, you think it is, but when you actually see that, they're absolutely tiny. So yeah, let's just do one. Do one there, and a little bit of a reflection in the sand, just smudge it in with your finger, and then a little dog, because they do have dogs on that beach. Whoops, still very wet. I'm not sure what breed of dog this is. I think it might be a Whippet. Right, there we go. And so when that's dry, I'm going to finish off now, so I'm just going to dry that off with a hairdryer very quickly, and then I'll be back and do a couple of glazes, and we'll call that. Right, I think we're dry now, so that feels pretty dry. All I'm going to do to finish off, I've got my little people in there. I'm going to put a little bit of a warm glaze over the foreground, maybe a couple of seagulls, just to give it a bit of life. Ideally, I also maybe would like to do the ink over the top again, make it a bit crisper, but I'm not sure. Sometimes if that doesn't work, you can just get thick white paint and drag a little bit for a few. When the waves flick up, they usually catch the light and they make them a bit brighter, but it gives the impression. So I'm going to put a warm glaze over her. I normally use something like, sometimes it's something like red oxide or something, but in this case I'm going to use a little bit of cadmium red light, which is very scarily red, and then just put a tiny bit of cadmium yellow light. I think this is cadmium yellow light, to make a kind of very pale orange. And I think that's what I'm going to put just over the front. I don't want to overdo it. Just brings the sunshine out a little bit. Just a little bit, and I wanted to put some over this rock as well. I'm not sure that's going to make any difference because it's too dark, but I did quite fancy having some lighter, sunnier bits on there. That's all really. I think my last gumball did push that back just enough to bring that one forward. So let's stick in a couple of seagulls, and we'll call that. Seagulls, when they're flying against the light, come out as black. If you've got big dark clouds, say you decided to put a load of dark clouds in there, you'd have to put them in white, but I usually put them in black. Little pointy brush. I don't want to put them exactly opposite the focal point I've got there, because I want your eye to move around that way, so I'm going to put them on a third up here somewhere, very small. Small is fine. It could be crows, actually. That's it, really. And if you wanted to finish off the knifey bit at the front, get some highlight colour, so that would be sort of yellow and white with a bit of something light on, and you can just drag it over like that with the flat of the knife, and it just picks up on some of those knobbly bits and gives the illusion of a few little stones or something on the beach. It's quite subtle. So that's it. I can show you one that I did earlier to show you how different they can be. So that's one I did earlier, the slightly smaller one. I did a different sky, I did a bit of yellow, I put a yellow glaze on the sky. It's a much smaller picture, and I put the tide a bit further out, so there's only 3 rows of ink, which also worked quite well, I think. We've still got that nice orangey bit coming through there. That could maybe a bit brighter in the one underneath. And just put a yellow glaze over the sky to yellow up the clouds a bit. So you can push and pull and play around, but hopefully we've achieved what we wanted, which is the stronger, chunkier, more textured foreground and the softer background. Thing to remember is that when you do your original sketch, to mark in where you think what you're going to consider your background, your middle ground and your foreground, and stick to it. Anyway, that's it for today. I look forward to seeing you again. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to put them in the comments below. Thanks.